Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4. Now look at Part 1.
Part 1.
You will hear a conversation in a gym between a customer and a receptionist. First, you will have 20 seconds to look at questions 1 to 3. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 3.
Hello, and welcome to Smith's Gym.
Hi there. I'd like to become a member.
Yes, of course. We just need to fill out a couple of forms, and then I can show you around the gym.
That would be great.
Let's start with the membership form. Can I have your name, please?
Yes, sure. Brad Simmons.
Is that Simmons with a D or without?
Without. S-I-M-M-O-N-S.
Got it. And can I take a contact number, please?
Yes, sure. It's 04983 55521.
Okay. 04983 55531.
No, it's 21 at the end.
Great. And do you have an email address?
Yes, brad07@elemnet.com. That's ELEMNET.com.
Right. Now, we've got 3 membership types here. Bronze, which is just off peak and costs £21 a month. Silver, which means you can use the gym at all times. This is £36.50. Or for just £5 more, you can get a gold membership, which gives you free access to the squash and tennis courts and all classes.
For now, I think I'll just take the silver.
That's fine, sir. That'll be £36.50 a month.
Great. When can I start?
Well, you'll need to have an induction first. We have spaces at 2:30, 4:45 and 8:15 tomorrow. Would any of these be suitable?
I can't do tomorrow. Do you have anything for Saturday?
Is that the 12th of November?
No, it's the 11th.
Yes, that's fine. Would 2:30 be okay?
That's fine.
I'll book you in with our trainer, Rob Ellis. Now, would you like me to show you around?
That would be great.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have 20 seconds to look at questions 4 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 4 to 10.
Okay, follow me. Let's go up the stairs to the main equipment room. As you can see, we have all the treadmills, bikes and rowing machines in here, and the weights are in the corner.
Great. And is that the pool over there? Can I use that with my membership?
Yes, at any time. Just go through the glass doors on the left. As you can see, the pool is dominated by the diving board at the far end. It's impressively tall. And on the right-hand side of the pool, you can see we have 2 lanes. The first one is a slow lane for those who are trying to improve their fitness. It gets really busy. The lane on the far right is what we call the club lane, because we reserve this for people who have membership. It is slightly less busy and the members can get a really good workout in it.
That sounds great.
Yes, it is good. And then near us, you can see a smaller area sectioned off nearly halfway across the pool. This area is where we put the school groups, which come in the late afternoons during the week, usually from about 4. We keep them confined to that space so that the other end can be used for free swimming.
And what is the little round pool for?
We call that the toddler's pool. It's not very deep, and the mothers often bring their children in to teach them to swim in it.
Great. Well, I'm glad I can use the pool. It will be good to vary my exercise.
Definitely. When do you think you'll be coming?
Most likely in the evenings. I'd like to come on Saturdays, but I often work then, so I think I'll have to miss that day and then come on Sundays.
Oh, so you'll be a regular visitor? That's great news. Can I ask why you chose Smith's Gym?
Well, actually, the television advert prompted me to join. It makes exercising look so much fun. I always thought going to the gym would be monotonous.
No, not at all. It can be a lot of fun.
My aim is to reach my optimum fitness. At the moment, I think I'm a bit unhealthy, so I'd like to change that.
Well, give it some time and I'm sure you will. Now, shall we go back and complete the payment details?
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You will hear 3 students discussing a language project.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
So, we need to get this field trip sorted out as soon as possible, don't we?
Yes, let's get started. James, have you worked out which 2 countries we should travel to?
Well, I thought we could go to the USA and Mexico because that's where the populations of most native languages are concentrated. But then I found out that the 3 languages we're most interested in are more widely spoken in Canada than Mexico, so I think we should go there instead.
OK. Anna, weren't you going to think about our research focus?
Yes, and I think I found 2 areas that would work well. Firstly, use of the 3 languages, Nardini, Salishan and Algic among the younger generation, people up to the age of 25. I found out that although there are many older speakers of Algic, it's used much less by the young. In fact, young people under the age of 25 use both Nardini and Salishan more than Algic.
That's interesting. That means that native language use isn't really being affected by the older generations anymore.
So what's the other focus area then, Anna?
Well, it would be good to try to find out what affects changes in native language speaker populations.
You mean things like family life and the influence of popular culture or tourism?
Yes, areas like that, but not tourism or culture because they're too general. I think we should look at whether family has an impact in terms of passing on native language use, and possibly the effects of government language policy too.
Government figures can be deceptive, but they're still worth looking at. Maybe we should also focus on something like job creation and work statistics and the number of people who leave the USA to live in another country instead.
Yes. I think emigration would be as useful as language policy.
OK then, let's focus on those 3 as well as what happens in families.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
Well, shall we look at our route now? Most of the speakers we're looking for are in California, so we could start there. We can spend 2 weeks travelling around and meeting people to get some background information, and then start collecting data.
What do you think about beginning in the southwest corner of the state and visiting the Barona Reservation?
That's a good idea. We'll be able to get some interviews with native language speakers there. And then we could go to the Eastern Mountains to visit the local education authority of North County. They've got a native language project for school children.
Why there? Wouldn't it be better to go to the education department in San Diego? It's bigger.
But they focus more on Spanish and English bilingualism and less on native languages.
In that case, the North County Education Authority will be more valuable, so let's do that. After that, we could head southeast to the town of Bishop. There's a company there called Cotec, which employs only bilingual speakers. I've emailed the managing director, who's happy to give us an interview.
Oh, that's great work, James. It sounds like something we should definitely do.
Right, well, I'll email her to confirm.
Also, we should go to Sun City. It's this bilingual town in the south-central area of the region. They have a policy whereby all signs in the town must be in the local language as well as English. We can take photos of these signs. They'll make good visuals for our report.
But won't that be intrusive for the people who live there?
No, they're used to it. The village is used as a model for other communities who'd like to do the same thing.
In that case, let's add it to the itinerary.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You will hear a reporter talking on the radio about old racing cars.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
The Goodwood Museum is currently celebrating some of the most extravagant types of car design in its Festival of Speed. Here's our reporter, Vincent Freed, who's on site to tell us about some of the cars on display.
Well, here I am, standing in front of one of the most prestigious cars ever built, the Duesenberg. A fantastically expensive, luxurious car built in the early part of the 20th century and bearing all the glamorous qualities of the Jazz Age. How many were there? Well, only 473 Duesenberg J-types were ever built, and the model here is one of the rarest. Each had a short 125-inch chassis or framework, and the body was always in the form of an open two-seater. The technology behind the car's 6.9-litre engine was extraordinary. It featured capsules of mercury in the engines to absorb vibration and provide an incredibly smooth ride. In fact, these cars offered unparalleled performance. In an age when 160 kilometers per hour was considered very fast, the Duesenberg promised a top speed of 180 kilometers per hour and could do 140 kilometers per hour in second gear. Duesenberg, who designed the car, sold it as a frame and engine. This was typical of the age again, and many prestige manufacturers such as Rolls-Royce did exactly the same. Owners able to afford the hefty $9,000 price tag for the basic car would then commission a coachwork company to build a body tailored to their own individual requirements. The Duesenberg's great attraction for the driver was its instrument panel, which offered all the usual features but also several others, including a stopwatch. It was the Duesenberg's technology that lay behind its success as a racing car, and they dominated the American racing scene in the 1920s, winning the Indianapolis Grand Prix in 1924, 25, and 27.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
On to another celebrity, the 1922 Leia Helica. Only 30 of these French propeller cars were built, and the model here at Goodwood, which was the fourth to be made, is thought to be the only surviving example still capable of running. The brains behind this car was Marcel Leia, who was an aviation pioneer first and foremost, and the influence of flying is quite apparent in the car. The Leia very strongly resembles a light aircraft with its front propeller, but in this case, it's minus any wings, of course. It's quite odd to think that this car was whirring through France just as the Duesenberg was blasting down roads at 160 kilometers per hour across the Atlantic. The Leias were used regularly in France in the 1920s and were even produced in saloon and van form, as well as two-seater. The Leia matched its propeller drive with its equally bizarre steering, which used the rear rather than the front wheels. But despite looking rather frail, it was a tough machine. In fact, when troops tried to steal it during the Second World War, the car's baffling design was clearly beyond the would-be thieves, and it ended up being driven into a tree, breaking the propeller. And now for the Firebird. This extraordinary car was first...
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You will hear a postgraduate psychology student talking to other students about a job satisfaction study he has investigated. Before you listen, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good morning, everyone. For my presentation today, I'm going to report on an assignment that I did recently. My brief was to analyze the methods used in a small study about job satisfaction, and then to make recommendations for future studies of a similar kind. The study that I looked at had investigated the relationship between differences in gender and differences in working hours, and levels of job satisfaction amongst workers. For this purpose, employees at a call center had been asked to complete a questionnaire about their work. I'll summarize the findings of that study briefly now. First of all, female full-time workers reported slightly higher levels of job satisfaction than male full-time workers. Secondly, female part-time workers reported slightly higher levels of satisfaction than female full-time ones did. On the other hand, male part-time workers experienced slightly less job satisfaction than male full-time workers. But although these results seemed interesting and capable of being explained, perhaps the most important thing to mention here is that in statistical terms, they were inconclusive. Personally, I was surprised that the findings hadn't been more definite, because I would have expected to find that men and women, as well as full and part-time workers, would experience different levels of satisfaction. So I then looked more carefully at the methodology employed by the researchers to see where there may have been problems. This is what I found. First of all, the size of the sample was probably too small. The overall total of workers who took part in the survey was 223, which sounds quite a lot, but they had to be divided up into subgroups. Also, the numbers in the different subgroups were unequal. For example, there were 154 workers in the full-time group, but only 69 in the part-time group. And amongst this part-time group, only 10 were male, compared to 59 who were female. Secondly, although quite a large number of people had been asked to take part in the survey, the response was disappointingly low. A lot of them just ignored the invitation. And workers who did respond may have differed in important respects from those who didn't. Thirdly, as the questionnaires had been posted to the call center for distribution, the researchers had had very limited control over the conditions in which participants completed them. For instance, their responses to questions may have been influenced by the views of their colleagues. All these problems may have biased the results. In the last part of my assignment, I made recommendations for a similar study, attempting to remove the problems that I've just mentioned. Firstly, a much larger sample should be targeted, and care should be taken to ensure that equal numbers of both genders and both full and part-time workers are surveyed. Secondly, the researchers should ensure that they are present to administer the questionnaires to the workers themselves. And should they require the workers to complete the questionnaire under supervised conditions so that the possibility of influence from other colleagues is eliminated. Finally, as workers may be unwilling to provide details of their job satisfaction when they are on work premises, it's important that the researchers reassure them that their responses will remain confidential, and also that they have the right to withdraw from the study at any time if they want to. By taking measures like these, the reliability of the responses to the questionnaires is likely to be increased, and any comparisons that are made are likely to be more valid. So, that was a summary of my assignment. Does anyone have any questions?
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the test. You now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to your Ielts listening answer sheet.